In 2020, it cost more than $447,000 to imprison just one inmate in a New York City jail per year. 447.
First of all, New York City is one of the most inflated costs of any city that you could ever look at incarceration rates.
That because I did not want to give the prison officials the satisfaction.
Crossing with.
According to an unclassified summary of the March Intelligence Assessment, the two most lethal elements of the domestic violence extremist threat are racially.
But they key in a locker, so.
Typically, across the nation, it's about $30,000 is what the cost is, 30 to 40, and higher for maximum security inmates, because it's kind of counterintuitive because they're like locked down all the time, but you need more security for these people in case something fucking happens. God forbid. But something always will. It's prison. But anyway, 447,000. The reason why that is unions and cutback deals, and then also what I think this study shows is actually
$7,000.
The embodied price of sending somebody to prison. That's what I would imagine.
And this is just your run-of-the-mill jail in New York City, not a maximum security
case.
prison where you get sent once you've already been convicted of a crime, where you can imagine there being a lot more operating expenses. No, but a jail where you go to if you get pulled over for drunk driving or you get caught with some drugs on you and you're awaiting trial. Which, to be fair, does include the infamous Rikers Island jail, the biggest jail complex in America that is very brutal.
If you could survive
Rikers Island is right along. That's not true. Rikers Island is not the biggest complex. Cook County is, by far. They have about 12,000 inmates on any given day. And I've been it's a prison in Cook County, in Illinois. And every day they send 4 buses of people to prison. Every weekday. Just boop, 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 in and out. And that's with super sweet prosecution.
That will average out to $447,000 per year. At that rate, you can live in the world's only 7-star hotel in Dubai, the Burj Al Arab, or the Mandarin Oriental overlooking Central Park in Manhattan, or the La Reserve in Paris if that's more of your style. But it managed, yet the cost went up by over $100,000. That $500,000 per.
Comparing a prison, accommodation to a hotel, I guess is kind of similar because it's just looking at all the what I just said about embodied prices. So you got all the COs, all the caseworkers, all the cops that are throwing motherfuckers in jail, the detectives, the technicians, the contractors, the guy who changes the vending machines, the commissary people, all that
per inmate has to go somewhere. The question is, where?
Could be pretty damn expensive.
This is the profit
in a place like New York City. So that's not indicative of what the cost is.
Business of the prison industrial complex.
It's inflated. You have to, and then here's the other thing: the profitable business of the prison industrial complex. People don't understand why or how it's profitable because it's not. The money comes out of state coffers. A little bit of it is taken from, and I believe he talks about this, but they'll basically repossess your shit and auction it off if you're believed to be implicated in a crime. And it's like a separate judicial action that has a lower preponderance of evidence. That's one way. And then also fines, and then a bunch of goofy ways that they can get a little bit of cost, but the big majority of the money comes from state and local taxes. That's how police costs are taken care of on the state level typically. And the whole idea of the prison industrial complex is farming out prisons to areas that are economically depressed. That's the whole profitability, is it's an economic stimulus for an area that has jack shit going for it. Look at a map of a state and see where their prisons are, and you will see the economically depressed areas that this factory or mill went away, or there used to be a military
Some of the
base.
footage you see in this video is from Storyblocks, today's video sponsor. Storyblocks is the all-in-one platform that lets you download unlimited stock video, audio in the United States.
skip his ad.
There's no commitment, and you can be none other than the United
So I like
States.
this part. So he talks
Yes, the
about
land of the free, home of the
how
brave
many
has
people
not
are
only the highest
actually
number of
in
prisoners, but also
and it's
followed by China
2.1
at
million
1.7
prisoners.
million, Brazil at 800,000, Russia at
And he talks about
500,000,
how,
and India at around
followed by
470,000. But these
And he
numbers
talks
can't.
about this
的监狱
because
是什么样的监狱？这是我们这儿确确实
if
实
you
就是个
actually
培
were
训中心。
to
Some
it's funny. It's a misnomer that America is the biggest in prison, because prison is a form of slavery. It really is. In slavery, contrary to what people say, or the isolation of black or African slaves here in America, it's a worldwide, ubiquitous phenomenon. In every society, every corner has some form, because if you go to war with somebody and you take them over, typically you got to kill all the adult males if you don't put them to work and put them in internment camps. It's fucked up. We haven't been, in our lifetime, we haven't been with somebody at that kind of war, like the Russia and Ukraine, or like the old school war where you have to intern your enemies. But you extrapolate that down, and it becomes an economic interest. How are you going to assemble enough people to build whatever the hell you're trying to build? In America, like I said, it once the factory goes away, what replaces it? And this is what replaces it.
estimates put the number of Uyghurs locked up in these training centers.
China actually has way more prisoners. If you include all those people that are detained against their will, and what they call is political re-education, right? And it basically takes who they would consider social parasites, and takes them out of society. That's what happens when you have Marxism. Because
at 1
read
million.
Marx, and he talks
And
about
I
a lot
highly
about
doubt
who
this
needs to
1
be
million,
removed
or
from
whatever the
society.
real number is, of vocational trainees are included in their prisoner statistics.
Vocational
And if that's the
training.
case, China
All
could
this
easily
stuff is
overtake the
euphemism.
US for the most humans imprisoned. Definitely doesn't take away from the US's giant prison population, but still
It
important to
doesn't.
keep in mind. But why? What's the point of having
The issue with our prison system that is just morally bereft is the fact that it's opportunistic. It basically takes the people who can't defend themselves, who don't have money, the vulnerable people, through two like siphons that bring you to a prison sentence, which are the cash bond system, because you're not going to take a fucking a plea bargain if you're out on bail. Possibly, you at least have that option of, okay, I'm washing my socks in a goddamn sink here, drinking shots of coffee with warm water in a goddamn county jail. County jails can get a little rough too, because you got all the people kind of mixed together, and it's hot, it's loud, it's fucked up. They put you in dorms a lot of times if you're like a low security offender. And this shit can get wild, and like in the bathrooms, dudes are boxing and butt fucking. Sometimes you run into that kind of stuff, but you have that of sitting in jail while your case is being heard, and then you also have the having a lawyer and having the ability to also grease political wheels, because a lot of the people who are like, they call it white privilege. There's all types of people of different skin colors that have privilege. America, we have a lot of white people, and white people did have a big racist advantage at one point. That's diminishing. The returns on that are diminishing way much. But what you have is a financial privilege in America's prison system.
having all these people held in
That's
captivity
bogus.
that you have to
That's
feed,
bogus.
manage, and somewhat provide for? Simple.
That
It's
if
pretty
you don't have
profitable
money, basically,
for
you
almost all the parties involved.
And I've been on
And
the
at
back
least in
end
the
of it. I'm
US's
white.
case, this business, this
Clearly.
pipeline, if you want to call it that, starts at the street level.
Sorry. He's got, this is a Bronx Tale, I guess. He's got a bunch of, this is from a throwback time, because when in the 60s to like the 80s, really prison's inception all the way until the early 90s, when a bunch of these scandals hit where basically gangs were running prisons in Illinois, where I did time. I'm familiar with this because of it. There's the Richard Speck incident. And I'll do a whole video on that, because it is a spicy incident. It was Richard Speck, a known serial killer with a boob job, sniffing blow with weapons and money, all kinds of shit, with a double cell that the cops had let him get because he was a painter and he'd been there for like 30 years. And he had his boyfriend, who was a big shot caller for the GDs. And there's a bunch of, they talk shit about the GDs for this because Larry Hoover was a lifetime inmate when he created the GDs, basically. It's a pretty unique story. But because of that, there's an unspoken gang rule that if a guy is a senior GD, he can take your butt cheeks. And I haven't like personally seen or heard anything like that. But then again, I was in an institution where people weren't doing a lot of time. But it is something that even the GDs would be like, yeah, man, goofy ass shit. I don't play that. Like, I think it's more of a, I think some people are horrified, but it allows some perverts in a serious maximum security prison to take advantage of somebody who's younger than them. That's basically what it boils down to. Either way, nowadays, the prison system is like consumerized. It's corporatized. It really is. Even a state prison, it's so comfortable.
Most people know that in
falsely.
America, you're innocent until proven guilty, but not your property.
Everything's
Yes, in America,
impersonal.
police can take your property without ever arresting you or charging you with a crime.
This is the part that he talks about property being repossessed.
Carrying too much cash? Police can accuse you of selling drugs or laundering money and seize it. No
Seize it
conviction.
without ever taking you to court. And police departments around the country have discovered this is a real...
Yeah, so what you have there is what I was describing earlier in this. I don't know how I'm going to edit it, but it's that the state, if you're implied or implicated in a crime, can take your property to court. And it's a whole nother process. California has the worst of these laws, and I remember in the it was some normal book, like National Organization for Reform of Marijuana Laws, and I have a guy who actually went to prison for marijuana, but in that book it gave you all these rules about like growing and smoking dope, and this was back when Colorado would send you to prison for weed, and I was a juvenile delinquent smoking a whole lot of fucking weed in Colorado. So it was important to me. So I remember reading this, and they had this whole section about how in California particularly, they had a bunch of people who were caught with big time grows at like big Humboldt style like fields of marijuana, 1,500 Sensimilla plants that were, like 8 feet tall, and taking their property long before they even went to court on the marijuana.
really
charge.
good way to raise money.
As long as they can claim that they suspect your house, your car, your jewelry, your cash might be connected to a crime, they can come and
Such
take
good
it.
editing.
They know better?
Under asset forfeiture, the government doesn't need anything but suspicion to seize your property and keep it for themselves.
It's a lower preponderance of evidence. That's how you. It's like they just need to the idea that it's involved in a crime, and proving a crime and involved in a crime are two different things. You could basically have this is like a crack house law. And one of the many laws that single out certain types of drugs. One of the drugs that are singled out the most is methamphetamine, particularly the manufacture of. I met several guys who were white guys in rural areas who were given life sentences or the equivalent. Actually, one guy, Leslie Gillespie, out of Kankakee Kewanee, Illinois. And you could probably look him up in the I know you can look him up in the Federal Register. I think he actually turned snitch, but originally he was given a life sentence. 4 letters, starts with an L. You are dying. Your natural life is going to be in prison for cooking meth. just because he had a couple felonies before that he'd been to prison for, so it enhanced his criminal background. And they just don't play with some drugs. In the 80s, it was crack. Then later on, it was
sides of the highways
meth.
do you think
Now
police
it's
set
fentanyl.
stings up on?
It's just
They
that,
set up stings on the side of the
they
highways
need a
where they know the drug
hysteria to
dealers are
create a war.
leaving town with cars full of money,
war.
not the sides where the drug dealers are coming into.
Oh, so they talk about this school to prison pipeline or prison to school pipeline, and it is real. That is the biggest disadvantage as a white guy from the suburbs with a lot more advantages than any of the black guys that I was, not any of the guys, because there's some like well-to-do black guys who came from families that are prominent that had social pull, aldermen and all types of goofy stuff in Chicago. It's not a completely ubiquitous thing. Race is not an even line where you're like, oh, you're white, you're privileged, you're black, you're not. It's not always so cut and dry. But as a guy who had a background that was above most of these gentlemen that I was locked up with, the biggest thing that I saw that was the difference between me and them was education and literacy. That a lot of these guys, and I've said this before on this channel, when we went to do our TABE test, the Adult Basic Education Test, I got a 12.9 and could have slept through the damn thing. And that meant that I was like a college freshman. This isn't a very elaborate, hard test. This isn't like the goddamn LSATs or something. No, this was a very simple test. And a lot of these guys were getting like 4 to 6s, like 4th grade reading level, 6th grade reading level. That's basically what that's saying. And how are you supposed to survive in America in an advanced society if you can't read? So we talk about all this like, systematic racism and shit. And the federal government seems to be the biggest proponent or prime mover of all the racism in America, or these like systematic where it's like if you're born black, your trajectory is different than if you're born white. It's all out of the services that are rendered to the community, and that's based on tax base. But at the same time, it's something that they point instead of to the shitty schools and fixing that and gutting the unions. What do the union-backed Democratic Party do? And the uniparty of weak-ass Republicans that are basically like neoliberals themselves, they point to the people. They say it's white people's problem, the people's problem. Hold on, motherfucker. I didn't make the education system how it is. I see that. I wish I could help. I would love to tutor people, if I could, because I used to write letters for guys in the joint and shit like that. It wouldn't no sweat off my sack. I would actually love to do that. A lot of white people would love to do that, but they want to blame the people because it's a problem they can't fix. When you could fix the schools, but you'd have to go against the unions. The same way why they have to feed people in the prison system to start with is the unions, the CO unions. They damn well close Rikers Island and basically send people who might have murdered somebody, or maybe a hate crime unit would still exist. It's like Escape from New York in New York City right now. But they still need to keep the prison population up to a certain amount to keep all the COs with a job. That's the thing that we talk about, prison to school pipeline or school to prison pipeline, however you want to call it. It's horseshit.
The business model of prisons is pretty simple. When the war on drugs was at its peak, government prisons were getting too crowded and couldn't keep up. So private companies pitched to the government that if you contract the work to us, we can build the prisons you need faster, make them safer at a lower cost.
So the privatized prison, I'm actually going to do a video on this. I have a video on this channel, but I wasn't really good at editing, and I'm still not good at editing. I fucked up the audio on my last video, and people are like, oh, this is so annoying, thumbs down. But I'm sorry, I'm trying to learn how to edit. I'll get better, and I'm going to kind of purge the videos that suck as time goes on as far as my editing. But privatized prisons had this whole story basically where there's a guy named Terrell Don Hutto who ran a profitable cotton picking farm. We're talking, and what actually was a slave plantation, just like all the big prisons in the South. You go to Parchman or Angola, all these, I don't know, I'm sure there's one in Alabama that used to be a goddamn plantation. And he was able to run it at a profitable like clip. So he was, raising chicken. He basically had a bunch of industries that were actually making the state money instead of costing money. And that concept was tried to move it up to basically a corporate thing, which is core civic. But it doesn't work out that way in privatized prisons because
Very compelling argument. So the government said yes.
Government malfeasance, kickbacks, and shit like that. But the actual cost, because the shit they're offering people, like the cost of what they actually give you as an inmate, ain't shit. Your meals are literally like, for all 3 meals is like $4 a day. If they give you any medical care, they can get that super fucking cheap. Because they can bring people who are like, doctors, they're not even doctors. I mean, they're one step above a veterinarian. I mean, I got my tooth pulled out by a lady once that was like, it was telling me like, oh yeah, this is the second one I've done. She like was laying on me and breaking out the tooth and actually had me handcuffed to the bed. She's like, I trust you, child, but you still might get a little crazy after this. I'm like, hold on. What the fuck are you doing? But that's tight. Like, they don't offer world-class anything. They offer you jack shit. And they give you walking around in some Chinese-made hospital scrubs. And yet they take a shitload of money from the public because it's a whole bunch of corruption and pork barrel bullshit. So.
Even though the last part about lowering costs didn't pan out so well.
Private prison companies could build facilities faster without voter approval. They also claimed they could provide a higher quality at a lower price.
So today, the job of the prison entrepreneur is to secure government contracts to build and run prisons. And the prisons you run, you charge a daily fee per prisoner. But as always, or man days, which is just a fancy name for what you charge per prisoner per day. So if you want to make more money, all you have to
yeah, exactly. And he talks about this. So he talks about how if you have man days, that's what you need to get people in your prison. And that basically means this is how much the privatized prison can take in from the state. You have a little bit of finicky accounting, how they basically get to calculating these man days, because you get statutory good time if it's a nonviolent crime. In the state of Illinois, once again, I keep using the state of Illinois, but I personally know the processes. In the state of Illinois, also, something to say about this is that the prison system was taken over by federal receivership in the 90s because of how horrible the prisons were in Illinois. I mean, they were really fucked up, and the gangs just ran them. They were like COs working as prostitutes and open drug markets, all kinds of killings. The Latin Kings fed the whole institution. One of their hombres in Stateville, like, literally put a dude in the fucking industrial meat grinder. It is live in prisons in Illinois back then. And so because they were taken in federal receivership, they were it's basically like ubiquitous, like that. Like, when you go to the feds, a lot of the stuff, like and they call them like the SIS officer, like the special information security guy, like a lot of the terms and the prices of commissary and a lot of the administrative stuff in the BOP, in the feds, is exactly the same as the IDOC, Illinois Department of Corrections. And that's just because there's some like best practices in the business, so to speak. But
to do is either increase the price each prisoner pays per day, lower your
the per diem, most of the time, the cost for these that they get, I think the feds can be up to like $200, and there's 70
operating costs, or increase the number of customers in your facilities. But in reality, private prisons only make up around 8% of the industry, which is not a lot.
Tiny.
So why do
in the federal system, there are 11 privatized prisons, and 8 of them are immigration holding centers. And let me tell you, the immigration thing, because I was such an like open borders kind of like militant lefty up until basically 2018 when I actually contributed to the system of human trafficking, messed up as it is. I was smuggling people. They were adult males. It wasn't any goofy sex trafficking bullshit. But I got to see firsthand just how horrific, because it's an extortion racket, because to get over the line, you have to pay the cartel. But neither here nor there, the bed spaces that they have for these people as you come across, there's only like 14 to 20,000 of these facilities, like as far as their ICE dedicated or any of these places. But a lot of these people, if they're coming here illegally, they've already broken a federal crime. I'm pro-immigrant. I think actually our economy needs a lot of these immigrants, and they're great people, and they're actually like way more. I think the Democrats think they're going to get all these votes out of them, but they're really conservative, hardworking people. They're not gonna want to like zero property rights and socialism. By the time these Mexicans can vote, a lot of them they're going to be basically Republicans. That's basically how it pans out, because they're hardworking people. They don't want to work hard to pay yo motherfucking shit. The Pisces are industrious. They're working 60, 70 hours when they get over here. But the thing is, they have to, because they have to pay $8,000 to basically some criminal organization that has put up a turnstile on our fucking border. So, and that's basically what I would say as far as a reform for the border, is to basically put up a turnstile where people could come at the Mexican border and say, I want to work in America for the next 6 months. Here's $5,000, and you can take a chunk of my check while I'm here. Yada yada yada. I'm going to this place to stay with these people, and all this is taken care of. Okay, and basically you pay a cost, or the people who are sponsoring you pay a cost, and cut the goddamn cartels out, and man, go fuck yourself. If we catch you extorting people like this, we're going to drag your ass. That should be who actually is thrown in prison for the whole human trafficking thing. We should basically just charge people money to come here and work. And that will kind of buoy the amount of people who are coming in on temporary stays that they have to renew and not have committed any crimes in that time. Because the market is only going to, because basically the employers are going to be the ones who are footing the bill. Saying, I want to, get a couple of these guys who are in this program, basically matching employers with, people that are trying to get across the border. And those people that have their little profile, like kind of like you're ordering a mail order bride or something, that say, I'm from here. This is my resume. These are my references. Yada yada yada. But mind you, clearly people should be hiring Americans, because that's why we have a prison system. Is there not enough goddamn jobs? There's desperation. The people feel like they're demoralized, morally, emotionally, and otherwise, and isolated, and they want you to feel that way. They want you. That's the sick, conniving shit about all this.
Do public prisons and jails like the ones in New York City still cost so much? Simple. It's the same reason why San Francisco spent $16 million to set up 262 tents for homeless people. Not 260.
Jake Tran's the G on this, and some of his treatment on these stuff is a little like sensational, or kind of just because he's trying to get people to click, and he's doing a great job. He's got great fucking videos. But I love that he included this part about the corruption of all this shit, of the treatment, because a lot of times the alternatives for prison are way more like bullshit, false economic stimulus, because you got a bunch of horrible rehabs where people are smoking spice and fucking dropping out on heroin and shit. The Fed sent me to a rehab in an old TV ward from back in the day. It's called ICCS. Sent me to there. right before I was about to get off, I failed the drug test for meth and heroin. Not right before I was about a year ago right now. That was the last time I did meth and heroin. It was a year ago. And they sent me off to a rehab, but it was a fucked up. There's no way, unless you actually wanted to be clean, and I was about to get off probation, I could smoke pot there. And that was a big issue with me is you could never smoke pot. And I love smoking pot, and I never really learned how to cope without some type of head change, you know. And I was a little heroin addict when I was a kid. My father was giving me dope. Not saying that it's right or that I shouldn't figure out a way to cope without some type of difference, but they'll stand in front of you and say no smoking pot. Then they'll offer you some garbage ass treatment like this MRT shit that's literally based off the Church of Scientology. I'll do a whole damn video on the MRT, but they'll offer you garbage treatment, and then when you fail, and you will fail, they'll throw you back in prison. My last UAs, I failed for marijuana in the feds. Literally, my last two UAs. And the last conversation I had with my PO, who had taken over for another lady, was, well, we might violate you. We've done it before. I was like, a snitch. And I'm not. Really?
2 homes, but a literal tent in a white square painted on the floor, which comes out to $61,000 per tent per year, which is 2.5 times more than what it costs to rent a 1-bedroom apartment in the same city.
There's so many scandals. By the way, there was one just reported in the San Francisco Chronicle about how the city of San Francisco paid $16 million to pay for something like 260 tents or something like that.
And that is the biggest issue with these prison systems, is because if you were with the money that's actually given, it all goes to like these NGOs, these charities, these basically fronts for Democratic donors most of the time, because they're the ones who really believe in this type of shit. You get caught in a conservative district, they might have a methadone clinic and a few treatment options, but most of the time they're going to send you to prison. Doesn't matter what your skin color is, what your background is, unless you can pay that bond that I was talking about, or get a good lawyer and be able to pay a shitload of fines. One of those 3 options might get you a mitigating, circumstance, or if you have another like circumstantial, could be that you're black and not white, or it could be you're slow, or it could be you were abused as a child, whatever it is. But that's your basically 4 options, and it's the whole idea of trying to give people a chance. This rehab, like San Francisco's doing, not just this, as far as like the Chase of Bowden guy, their Weather Underground progeny, this crazy leftist guy who's basically running that city into the ground through the DA position. But this whole thing is out of as if it's compassionate to let people live in squalor. And but there's a bunch of people who are wolves sitting around these sheep. Basically, these people are just basically reduced to vegetables, laying there on the ground in a stupor, and allowing them on the government's dole to basically become a nuisance and a danger to themselves and everyone else involved. And it's morally reprehensible. But the idea of getting people into rehab and all this shit is actually a great necessary thing that needs to be happen, because you're not gonna get in. Like, I was a junkie. I wasn't a serious criminal. I'm not a serious criminal. I got sent to prison twice. It didn't do shit for me. I was able to read and work out a lot. I mean, that's great. It's kind of like a vacation. And also, I had to quit smoking for a few years, so it helped me. In that, I mean, there's some benefits to it in that way, but as far like it dehumanizes you, so it's not a good a net positive. Hell no, it's not a net positive.
Why? Because someone's got to provide the city with tents at inflated prices. Someone's got to paint the squares on the floor at inflated prices. Because why not? The government's paying. They're not gonna blink an eye at an extra few $1,000s. It's not their money, and it makes them look.
But that's the whole thing, is that it's their buddies basically, that they have all these people who are lined up, who have counseling centers. They have, their pharmaceutical salespeople who have contracts at methadone clinics and Suboxone clinics.
Good that they're caring for homeless people. The same is true for public prisons. Sure, the government is the one running them, but they still have to buy uniforms, food from other contractors to keep the show going. So we covered the police, we covered the prisons, but there's one more part to this prison economy that we haven't covered yet.
Our intelligence and law enforcement agencies undertook that assessment in the first several weeks of this administration.
As American as
In March, they concluded that domestic violent extremists
the question is
pose
why?
an elevated
Why
threat
should the blues be so at home here? Well, America provided
Our experience
the
on the ground
atmosphere.
confirms this. The number of open FBI domestic terrorism investigations this year has increased.
Those in the area affected in Maine, on either side, as well as the pink wood and stucco fortress, caught fire.
Resistance, pursue the